movements in California. Like, I want to know, like, if you were hypothetically the governor, and that proposition got its popular vote to be on the whatever that it has to pass the proposition process in California, where do you stand on California just leaving the union?
Well, I've actually been speaking with the people of Jefferson State that have been petitioning since
California was founded. Jefferson has been there forever.
To create their own state. And we still have people in those regions of the state that still feel the same way. Mm-hmm. So with them having petitioned for legally doing so through their Article 4, Section 3 request, I as governor would respect that. I would create a path for them to create their own government. Let's say if it's 2 years, 4 years time, it gives them the opportunity to transition to create their own body of government locally.
But I'm
hoping,
I don't just mean Jefferson, like I'm talking Cal Exit.
Yeah,
like there are always
absolutely.
movements like this for the whole state.
There's even a proposition on the ballot to split California into 3 states.
Right.
So as governor, I would definitely, again, sign that into law. I would give the people of California what they want. But that's also my goal as governor for everyone. So I'm hoping that the changes that I can make for the state will entice the people to want to stay unified. I think that would make us an even greater state, but ultimately, if they did want to create their own government, that would make my job a lot easier, believe it or not. Instead of me having to focus on the entire state, I would be able to focus on the smaller region. So if anything, that makes the work, it cuts off the workload. But transitioning from a decentralized government to a more localized government is definitely ideal. And it starts first with us libertarians, the ones out there fighting for freedom. I look at being a libertarian as being a freedom fighter. That's what the platform has given me, an opportunity to come in and actually use a political platform to make that change for everybody. I wish Malcolm X or Martin Luther King would have ran for office. Imagine
that's precisely where it starts to fall apart. Is when you want to make the change for everybody, and not everybody wants to make the change. Like, there's a difference between saying, I want to be able to make the change for myself and for the people that agree with me, and I want the freedom to be able to experiment the way that our philosophy suggests, and we're going to drag everyone who disagrees with us along with us because it's for their own good.
No, we're not dragging nobody.
But you are, in the sense that you're saying you want to fix the problem for everybody.
Right now, we're all in a chicken coop, and we know this, okay? And we have a hen watching over the hen house.
You want to be
a fox.
The fox of the hen house? Well, who's the head of a chicken coop?
Exactly. We need to get rid of the fox, cover the hen house, open the door, and whoever wants to leave can leave.
Yeah.
And you're going to have people like that. They won't realize, hey, well, now that I'm not forced to get a driver's license, I don't feel secure in driving. Now that I'm not forced to get documentation for my child if they're born, my wife and I, when we have a kid, we don't want to have a document issued to us by the state to say our child is now state property. We're going to let the people know that you're not going to be forced. None of this is going to be mandated for you, and you're going to have the right to choose. That's government's job and role, and it should have been that way the whole time.
We just mentioned my daughter was born in the hospital, the pregnancy hospital right up off 805. I can't remember the name of the hospital, but she was born there, and very aggressively, the next day, a nurse very aggressively brought in the Social Security forms. And so it's something you have to sort of actively resist. And she's not a government agent. This particular nurse is a hospital employee, but she was there because they know that people want to take that child exemption on their taxes. And in order to do that, you got to list their name, you got to have a Social Security number. So it's very insidious in a way, literally on day one of one's life. But I just want to circle up a little bit. We have clearly a hardcore agorist position here, somewhat work within the electoral system libertarian position here. I got involved in, Ron Paul inspired me as well, but for me it was 1988. For you guys, it was 2008. So I'm a little, we got Gen X versus millennials here. The devil's advocate question, especially for you, Alma. Is it a good thing, even conceptually, that Rand Paul and Thomas Massie and Justin Amash are in the Senate and the U.S. House versus some hack who would presumably have their place otherwise, or is it a waste of time and resources that they even managed to get there?
Do they get paid fiat currency for their jobs? They don't do it voluntarily? Then it's a waste.
Yeah, so is it a good thing that these people run for office, and is it a good thing that they're in office? So I think that Ron Paul's 1988 campaign is the perfect example of this, because in 1988, he was saying literally exactly the same thing, almost word for word, that he was saying in 2008. However, in 2008, there's this groundswell of people out there cheering that somebody's finally saying this, and the internet. But in 1988, there wasn't as strong of a response, and it's because it isn't. Ron Paul is a necessary component of this phenomenon, but it's also the environment around him. Because when he's running in 2008, he's running at the tail end of the Bush era, when people are desperate to hear this kind of a message, right? So in my opinion, essentially, if a politician does a good thing, then that's a good thing because a good thing happened, right? But if a politician does a bad thing, that's also a good thing, because it just means that more and more people are going to be fed up with government and they're going to be seeking alternatives. So there really is it's a wash if there's good politicians in office, right? Because you don't know what these people would have been doing with a productive career out in the private sector, doing something that, maybe this is a little too religious or spiritual or something, but I believe people have a calling, and I don't believe a single person's calling is politics. Which means that everyone in politics is ignoring their calling. And so, yeah, what would Justin Amash do if he weren't in politics? What is he sincerely built to do? What is he good at? What is he passionate about besides fighting a monolithic structure he can't change? You know what I mean?
Even my most recent experience with Ron Paul, I introduced him to my youngest daughter, who is also undocumented. And we left within 12 hours after having her at the hospital, so that helps if you're trying to avoid government forms. But I said to him, she's undocumented, and he goes, oh, I knew a woman that did that once, and she had a really hard time. So even though he has changed the paradigm for so many other people, he himself is still stuck in his own paradigm. And he's stuck. He's there. He's still a politician when he doesn't even realize what he's changed.
And that's fine. That's him. But I'm me, and I'm the future. So as someone that's advocating for a new movement, a new culture change, a shift from the old paradigm to something anew, that is exactly what I will be respecting. I myself, I'm a musician. I actually moved out to California from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to pursue a career in music, and I was successful in doing so. I'm a rapper.
Will you come to the Jackalope Freedom Festival, July 31st through August 6th, and perform and speak on whatever you would like to speak about?
That sounds lots of fun. We'll talk more, yeah.
I was going to ask you also if you've heard of BitNation.
I believe so.
BitNation is creating decentralized, borderless, voluntary nations.
Yeah.
And they have an app you can download on your phone, and you can now create your own nation, and you can chat with other nations. So you no longer have to ask permission to secede from any union or group of people or whatever. You can go on BitNation, create your own nation, and offer governance services to anyone in the world without permission.
Excellent. Yeah, I love the idea. And as a musician, my calling, so to speak, was to help people. And that's what I saw my job as a musician to do, was to open up people's mind, open up their hearts, allow them to see a different perspective through my music, and allow that energy to be able to challenge them to challenge the establishment. And that's still something that I aim to do, is to serve the people and to help the people, because I love the people. And that actually is what inspired me to transition to politics. Not that I feel like it's my calling at all. I feel like it's going to be a means to an end. so to speak. So
I would challenge you to do your job voluntarily without any pay if you're going to run for any office.
I would love to do that, which is why on my second term, I will offer that. In the meantime, for my first term, I got to make sure me and my family is secure, and I'm not.
You should get a crypto job. You know, ICOs are offering bounty programs like this.
That would be
go
great.
Go on Bitcoin Talk, forum, and just find yourself some bounty programs, and you could have all kinds of cryptocurrencies.
That would be cool. I actually would love to create a cryptocurrency for the state of California and let it be represented by the state's resources and let the people benefit from that.
The banks will probably beat you to it.
Now, this would be directly to the people of California. That's why we got to get rid of the banks. And as governor, I would decentralize the monetary system here. I would audit the state's finances and get rid of the IRS, get rid of the state's Federal Reserve. That's what I'm proposing to do. And again, a great way for us to consider getting the state out of debt is actually infusing some bit of an alternate type of currency. And cryptocurrency, since it already has proven to work, could be a great way for us to actually make money for the state that's outside of the Federal Reserve fiat currency system. So these are different concepts that are common sense for some reason.
Or rare sense.
Yeah, that our politicians in office right now are not considering it. And why isn't it? And it's because they have special interests backing them. Their friends that have kept them in office, the people that contribute the most money to their campaigns. And that's why they want to stay in office. That's why they want to keep that position of power over all of us. And it's a way for us to transition away from that, break free from that, and it's just a matter of us changing our mindset, looking at politics differently. And that's why my goal is to bring back the nobility and loyalty of the politician and that role that it served in our community that it once had. It doesn't have that anymore.
I got another question about government. If an individual chooses to document their property on the blockchain, can they opt out of the government jurisdiction and no longer pay any property taxes?
That would be great, but what if we got rid of the taxation system altogether?
But what if the individual did it before you got rid of the taxation system altogether? Will there be any enforcement saying like they can't or they have to pay? Like if, say you're governor and you haven't enacted all of these things yet, it's 4 years, it's gonna take 4 years, right? I think Adam Kokesh says he's gonna dissolve the whole government in some amount of time or whatever. When if it's as easy as signing a pen to a paper, it should be just as easy as signing a pen to a paper, right?
Exactly.
I just think there's other people that roll over politicians, so I'm not really so sure it's that easy. So I think that from an individual standpoint, if I were to want to be a free individual, I would document my property on the blockchain without permission, put a public notice sign up saying, my property is documented on the blockchain, you can see it at this address, we're no longer part of this government jurisdiction, for any other information, go to blah, 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 whatever, and be left alone. Because I have a friend right now who lives in his RV on another person's property, and the same government official that harassed Adam Kokesh on his property, that cease and desist of building a Cobb home or whatever the heck, he's now being harassed by the same guy in another city. So for living in his RV on another person's property, and it's it's Chino Valley, Arizona, and the guy's name is David Williams. In case you want to give him a hard time, because his reason for forcing Adam to comply was that his wife was getting threats. Well, I had the Coast Guard boarded our boat a month ago, and I had all kinds of threats after I shared that on Facebook. They got 110,000 people reached, and the Coast Guard's like, oh, wait until your children are drowning and you need to call us, and blah, blah, blah. So I realize now that their job is to herd dissenters out or back to land where you're a bigger slave. We passed their inspection. We had all our safety equipment.
Well, the job of government really is supposed to uphold the Constitution. They don't. It's a piece of paper, but us being individuals, we have to take that interpretation of what's said in writing and actually put it into action. We don't.
Why?
and that's why.
I mean, you're saying they're in violation of contract, right? So
They're in violation of
why do I have any obligation to uphold my side of
Which
the
you
contract
don't.
if they're already
You
in
don't
violation?
at all. And that's why, as governor, I would not be violating your constitutional right. If anything, my goal would be to change the rules and make sure that all of the new players on the team are now playing by those rules. It's just like a football team. The police, the state officials, they're all players on the field. If you change up the playbook, if you change up the rules, they're still players in the game. They still want a paycheck, and they're going to do what you tell them to do. If they don't, they're fired. It's that simple. We need to make it that simple, but we don't have too many people in office that, of course, care about what we care about. They're not taking that trust and that public trust of our contract to respect us, our private rights, literally.
See, what I suspect is that this is actually impossible. That if you were sitting in the seat of governor and you were sitting at the helm of a government that had, even if it was policies you agreed with, even if you had all of the best possible scenarios of what you want in your administration to actually take place and California becomes the state that you envision, that it would still be impossible for you or for the departments that you've established to actually respect people's rights literally when they dissent.
And that's why they would be fired.
Well, that would be their job, though.
You know? Their job.
I think that these things are
What?
incompatible.
Like what?
Well, the Constitution, for example. Like, if there were people in California that were dissenters from the California Constitution, and the California
already
government
have
was
that.
in charge of enforcing it, like there would be between
No.
the collective and the individual, there are always contradictions of values and contradictions of desires.
Okay, what you're talking about enforcement of the Constitution, there is
Right.
no enforcement of the Constitution upon the people. What they're enforcing are arbitrary
Well,
laws.
whatever the policies are that exist
And
under
that's
any
why we get
government
rid of them.
administration.
Traffic codes-
So no policies.
Traffic codes are not laws.
No traffic codes,
Policy
no policies.
codes are not laws.
Okay.
And these are what the police departments, these are what the attorneys are applying to us. We are not part of the law society.
You're talking about an incredibly minimalist government compared to what California is now.
Exactly.
So what do you think? Give me an example of an agency or policy that you think that the California government has a legitimate role in, and I'll see if I can come up with a reason why someone might dissent to that.
None.
No policy.
There's none that I
So
can think of.
you're running for governor of Anarchotopia.
Precisely. And as a libertarian, first things first,
All
baby
right.
steps, we're going to take a little bit at a time. And all right, for instance, there was a shooting here in Sacramento where a 22-year-old black male was shot and killed in his grandparents' backyard for holding a cell phone. Stephon Clark.
Stephon Clark.
He was
Yeah,
holding a cell phone.
He was standing in his backyard holding a phone. The police said he's holding a gun, and they
They
all
believe-
opened fire.
exactly.
And they shot him like 20 times?
They shot at him 20 times. 8 of the bullets hit him, the majority of which struck him in the back. So he was turned to the police. And the threat, as you pointed out, was them saying he had a gun. Now, if they were upholders of the United States Constitution, Second Amendment is your right to bear arms, which means we all have the right to be in possession of a weapon. But because of the laws like the Mulford Act here in the state of California, which was pushed by the NRA back when the Black Panthers were armed and stormed the Capitol Hill in Sacramento, that's why they pushed it, the Reagan administration. And that was to subdue, again, prevent those people that were exercising their constitutional right from doing so.
Yeah.
That was no enforcement of the Constitution. That was an abridgment of it, an infringement of it, and it's still in place, and it's affecting us to this day. So if we got rid of that and let law enforcement know, there is no reason for you to be shooting a person unless they are posing a threat to you.
Sure.
If they are in possession of a weapon.
But
Because
so here's what I'm hearing is that a police department is still going to exist, that there's going to be some sort of a government oversight that tells the police department how they can and cannot behave.
the sheriff's department,
The sheriff's
that's his
department.
job.
Okay. So
And that's why we elect our sheriffs.
I'm going to dissent here real quick. If that was the policy of California, I would dissent. And the reason is because in my conception of what a free society looks like, it isn't the governor and the sheriff's department that reigns in the police department. The force that reigns in the police department is me not being forced to pay for them if I don't want to. And if a police department stops behaving the way I, as the consumer, think that they should, I just stop paying them.
Okay, let me correct a few things for you. Police departments are policy enforcers. They are paid for by the cities, not the state. State subsidizes with certain...
At any level that I'm paying for them, I would have the option to not pay for them.
Right, so if you were living in the city, you would have to lobby on your city officials. There's nothing as governor I would be able to do about that.
Okay.
But what I would be able to do